LiDAR works in a similar way to radar. It scans the ground by sending out 1,000,000 laser points every 4 seconds and analyzing the information reflected back.
It started with a glitch on the LiDAR scanner. A team of geologists was surveying a restricted section of the Grand Canyon when the laser mapping software rendered something impossible. 3 perfect symmetrical arches hidden behind a rock wall. This wasn't erosion, this was architecture. Against protocol, they rappelled down into the forbidden zone to verify the data. What they touched inside that cave was colder than the surrounding rock and vibrated with a rhythmic pulse. They had found a door to the past that was never meant to the cliff that should not be. Most people think the Grand Canyon is just a big hole in the ground, a tourist spot for taking photos and riding donkeys. But there are massive sections of this park that are completely off the grid. We are talking about areas where the map just goes blank. Rangers call one of these specific areas the Forbidden Zone. It's a stretch of cliffs so vertical and unstable that the Park Service has a standing order. No one goes in. Not hikers, not drones, and definitely not tourists. The official story is safety. They say the rock is too loose, that it's a geological hazard. And yeah, rocks do fall there. A lot. But locals and indigenous groups like the Hopi and Havasupai tell a different story. For centuries, their oral traditions have spoken of the place of emergence, a spot deep in the canyon where the veil between the upper world and the underworld is paper thin. They say their ancestors emerged from beneath the earth through these openings. To them, it's sacred ground. To the federal government, it's a restricted area. So, here's the deal. For decades, this place was left alone, until early 2024. A multidisciplinary team of researchers managed to get a rare permit. They weren't looking for ancient cities or lost gold. They were there to study rock stress fractures using LiDAR. This is technology that uses laser pulses to see through foliage and map the ground in 3D. They set up camp on the opposite rim, aiming their scanners at the Forbidden Zone. For the first few days, it was boring work. Just miles of jagged limestone and granite. The monitors showed the usual chaos of a crumbling cliff. But then the lead technician noticed something weird on the north face. Amidst all the jagged, broken rocks, the laser returned a signal that was smooth. Too smooth. Nature doesn't do straight lines and perfect curves. The software rendered the data and 3 distinct shapes popped up on the screen. They were arches. Perfectly symmetrical, evenly spaced arches hidden behind a veil of loose rock. The tension in the command tent went through the roof. They calibrated the machines thinking it was a glitch. But the image stayed. It looked like the entrance to a building buried under thousands of years of debris. This wasn't a random cave formation. This was geometry. Now the team had a choice. They could pack up, file a report, and wait 5 years for a permit that might never come. Or they could take a closer look right now while they had the gear. Curiosity won. They decided to send a small team down the cliff face. This was dangerous stuff. We are talking about a sheer drop into a section of the canyon known for crushing climbers. But the promise of what lay behind those arches was too strong to ignore. They geared up, checked their ropes, and went over the edge. As they descended, the wind howled through the canyon, battering them against the wall. Loose rocks clattered down into the abyss below. It was a slow, terrifying climb, but about 2 hours in, the lead climber shouted over the radio. He had found a ledge, and behind a pile of fallen boulders he could see it. A smooth, dark opening cut straight into the mountain. He swung over, boots scraping against the stone, and shone his flashlight into the darkness. The beam didn't hit a rough cave wall. It hit something that reflected the light back. He radioed up, his voice shaking. "You guys need to see this. The walls, they're polished." They had found the entrance, but they had no idea that they were stepping into a machine that had been waiting for them for thousands of years. What they found inside defied all logic. The stone mirror. The team squeezed through the narrow opening one by one. The first thing they noticed was the temperature. Outside, the canyon was baking in the sun. Inside, the air was freezing. It was a dry, unnatural cold that seemed to seep right through their thermal gear. And the silence? It was heavy. Usually caves have sounds, dripping water, wind whistling, shifting rocks. This place was dead silent. It felt like a vacuum. As they moved their lights around, the wow factor hit them hard. They weren't standing in a natural cavern, they were in a hallway. The walls were curved and seamless. If you've ever been in a limestone cave, you know it's sharp and gritty. This was like polished marble. One researcher ran a gloved hand along the surface and couldn't find a single bump or crack. It was frictionless. Think about the effort that takes. To smooth out a cave wall deep inside a cliff requires tools, time, and serious manpower. But there were no soot marks from torches on the ceiling, no piles of rubble on the floor. It was pristine. The hallway opened up into 3 connected chambers. The layout was precise. The first room was rectangular, the second was a half dome, and the third stretched back into the shadows. One of the engineers pulled out a laser measure. He started checking the dimensions. That's when things got spooky. The rooms followed a perfect ratio. The height of the arch matched the width of the floor in a way that suggested advanced math. It's not that simple to just carve a hole like this. You need blueprints. You need to understand structural integrity so the mountain doesn't collapse on your head. In the second chamber, they found something even stranger. High up on the walls, there were faint lines. At first, they looked like scratches, but under UV light, they formed a pattern. It was a repeating wave design, looping over and over. It looked suspiciously like the symbols for water found in ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia. But we are in Arizona. Those cultures are thousands of miles and thousands of years away. So here's the deal. The mainstream timeline says the people living here thousands of years ago were hunter-gatherers using stone tools. They lived in shelters, not massive engineered underground complexes. They didn't have the technology to polish hard rock to a mirror finish. Yet here it was. The team moved into the largest chamber. This was the main event. The ceiling here was domed and the acoustics were wild. A whisper at one end of the room could be heard clearly at the other, but it didn't echo. The sound just traveled, crisp and clear. It was designed. It had to be. In the center of this room, the floor wasn't flat. There was a raised stone platform surrounded by a ring of boulders that were angled specifically toward the east. It looked like a stage, or an altar. The team approached it slowly. The air felt electrically charged here, like the feeling you get right before a thunderstorm breaks. The hairs on their arms were standing up.